pod bay doors, please, Hal.
From now on, you will speak only when spoken to. And the first and last words out of your filthy sewers will be, sir. Do you maggots understand that?
Sir, yes, sir.
Bullshit, I can't hear you. Sound off like you got a pair.
Sir, yes, sir.
If you ladies leave my island, if you survive recruit training, you will be a weapon. You will be a minister of death praying for war. But until that day, you are pukes. You are the lowest form of life on earth. You are not even human fucking beings. You are nothing but unorganized, grabastic pieces of amphibian shit. Because I am hard, you will not like me. But the more you hate me, the more you will learn. I am hard, but I am fair. There is no racial bigotry here. I do not look down on niggers, kikes, wops, or greasers. Here you are all equally worthless. And my orders are to weed out all non-hackers who do not pack the gear to serve in my beloved corps. Do you maggots understand that?
Sir, yes, sir.
Bullshit, I can't hear you.
Sir, yes, sir.
What's your name, scumbag?
Sir, Private Brown, sir.
Bullshit, from now on you're Private Snowball. Do you like that name?
Sir, yes, sir.
Well, there's one thing that you won't like, Private Snowball. They don't serve fried chicken and watermelon on a daily basis in my mess hall.
Sir, yes, sir.
That you, John Wayne? Is this me?
Who said that? Who the fuck said that? Who's the slimy little communist shit twinkle-toed cocksucker down here who just signed his own death warrant? Nobody, huh? The very fucking godmother said it. I'm fucking standing. I will PT you all until you fucking die. I'll PT you until your assholes are sucking buttermilk. Was it you, you scroungy little fuck, huh?
Sir, no, sir.
You little piece of shit, you look like a fucking worm. I bet it was you.
Sir, no, sir.
Sir, I said it, sir.
Well, no shit. What have we got here? A fucking comedian, private joker. I admire your honesty. Hell, I like you. You can come over to my house and fuck my sister. You little scumbag. I got your name. I got your ass. You will not laugh. You will not cry. You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you. Now get up. Get on your feet.
The pod bay doors are open. Welcome once again. I'm your host, Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com and OverthinkingOscars.wordpress.com. Here with the deadliest weapon in the world, my critic, dare say legend, from TalkMovie.com, Mr. Doug Heller. How the heck are you today, sir?
This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine.
Welcome to Kubrick once again.
So
our determination to eventually talk about everything that Kubrick directed.
Well, admittedly we've had a little Shakespeare on the mind because the tragedy of Macbeth was a very big movie for both of us last year. So Macbeth has been on our minds, and one of the famous lines from Macbeth is all the sound and fury signifying nothing. Mm-hmm. And so last episode, I should say, because these aren't going up a week apart, last episode we talked about Elvis the Searcher, which was your sound. Mm-hmm. This episode, we are talking about your fury, which is very furious.
Yes, this is Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket.
Yes. This is an often half-maligned film.
Because of the second half.
That's the half that I am referring to being maligned. But the first half... No, but I don't understand why people don't get that the first half isn't powerful if the second half isn't there.
Because the first half, I think, is more simplified. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on. Although the first time through, you don't really notice it. And the reason you don't really notice it is because of this explosive performance by R. Lee Ermey.
Which, how on earth did he not win an Oscar for that?
How did he not win an Oscar for this?
I mean, it's basically he was a
Did not get an
retired Marine drill sergeant. He was the technical supervisor. He
who
was
worked on who was a drill sergeant at Paris Island.
right, yes. And he was just the technical advisor
Mhm.
to the actor hired to play the drill sergeant.
Mhm.
But Kubrick liked what he was hearing Ermi say so much, he just fired the actor, gave Ermi the job, and started the man on a, what, 3 decade career?
Until he passed away.
Until he passed away. So, I mean, this is more immersive. I can't actually imagine that in real reality it's as bad as that. But in the time that it was set, yeah, probably was.
I heard a little blurb from Arlie Ermy about that, because at the time he was supposed to. At the time he was in Paris Island, and this is when all hell had broken loose in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and the Johnson administration was falling apart under the weight of it. Because, and I don't want to offend anybody by saying this, but the Vietnam War was a war run by politicians, and that's always a bad idea.
It was completely instigated. It was completely started, and the whole reason was politicians. It was just
Politics.
politics, and it had nothing to do with people.
And when it went bad,
Boy, did it go bad.
when it went bad, the response from Washington was to keep throwing men at it.
Double down.
And so Arlie Ermy said, at that time, you went from having a platoon of 60 men to having a platoon of soldiers, of boots. In boot camp at Paris Island went from about 60 men to about 130.
Mm-hmm.
And they were to be moved through very fast.
Right.
And the mission of the drill sergeant was to do exactly what he's trying to do in this film.
Right. See, the thing that you have to remember is that not every drill sergeant was Sergeant Hartman.
Right.
His method was, let me degrade you until you feel the need to prove to me that you are not what I say you are.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, he was a negative reinforcement instructor as opposed to a positive reinforcement instructor. Look, I know you can do this. You can do this. You can make me proud. He made you feel like nothing until you decided you wanted to feel like something.
Because under the circumstances, it is a lot faster to do it this way. Because
it's
the
also
technique,
tremendously more psychologically damaging.
it is. But what he's trying to do essentially is to break them down psychologically, and so that he can then build them back up again.
Right, into what they need at the time.
Into what they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes it clear. He makes it very, very clear exactly what he's trying to make them into.
Mm-hmm.
Over and over again, he states it.
You're a killer.
You're a killer. I'm trying to make you into a killing machine.
The most lethal weapon in the world is a Marine with his rifle.
The deadliest weapon in the world is a Marine and his rifle. It is your killer instinct, which must be harnessed if you expect to survive in combat. If you hesitate, you will hesitate at the moment of truth. Then you will be in a world of shit. I mean, that's insane. It sounds insane outside of the,
Outside of the, but he's not.
Marines are not allowed to die without permission.
Right.
And I kept thinking of that in Star Trek 2 when he says, "Is the word given, Captain?"
Yeah. It's the dynamic performances that take their root in that Paris Island segment. The fact that we only then get to see Joker and then eventually Cowboy from that first part, I think that's where a lot of the people get their disconnect, is because they don't follow that group forward into in country into
Just
the
Joker.
shit. We just get Joker and then we just get Cowboy. So in a typical war movie where you go through boot camp with people, you follow that same group of people throughout the whole movie.
Oh, the ragtag group.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
Kubrick did it like it really was. Your whole platoon from boot camp is scattered to wherever they need you.
Right.
You might be in a group with people that you know, but you probably won't be. You just know that they're fellow Marines.
There's one thing that's said at the end of the film, and it complements something that's said at the beginning. You know, I am here to weed out all non-hackers unfit to serve in my beloved Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, as they're about to head off to do whatever they do, he says, some of you will go to Vietnam. Some of you will not come back. But remember this, Marines die. That's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
And all the rest of your life, every single Marine is your brother.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that he's disconnecting them, but then trying to connect them with each other. It's like he's disconnecting them from what came before.
Mm-hmm.
And when he sort of rewires their minds, it's as a Marine and as a family. The Marine Corps is your family and will be for the rest of your life.
Which is exactly why it has been, for hundreds of years, virtually impossible for war combatants to come back from the military and function the same way that they did. Yeah, because their world is different now. What they learned is different now.
And the younger that you go into the Marine Corps,
the more it will completely change the way you are.
Which is why when you have career military men who have been in the service since they left high school, and they become parents, they become a father, and they're trying to instill in their children the same kind of discipline that they had in the military. It's harder because they're
just kids.
They're just kids.
They just children. Want to play and have fun, and that whole
and kids are emotional and they cry.
Yeah,
and they get upset.
That whole kids should be seen and not heard. It's like, why would you ever say that to a child?
Yeah.
That has never been possible at any point in human history, or honestly, in the history of living beings on this planet or any other.
Well, I've always been the way I was raised is a nurturing hand on this side, a disciplinary hand on this side. You do and you discipline when it's necessary.
The only discipline that was in my house, there was no physical violence. There was never any, not even you did something and you got the belt. There was no threat of a belt. There was nothing.
No, I did.
We did not have that whatsoever. We were sent to our room, but there was still, for me, I didn't get into trouble because I knew that whatever punishment I received at school or wherever would be 10 times worse at home, and I did not fear physical harm. I just knew whatever it was going to be, I wasn't going to like it.
Right.
The only time that my father hit me, I was 17 or 18 years old. I was the head equipment manager for my high school band, and I was going to go to like a little party after or something like that. And he wasn't following me. And I slowed myself down because adrenaline, and I was talking really lightning quick. But I slowed myself...
Plus your age.
Plus my age. I slowed myself down and spoke to him with a twinge as though I were speaking to someone perhaps a little mentally slow.
Yeah.
And he slapped me across the face. And I looked at him. I did not get angry, because even in that moment I thought, you know what? I deserved that.
Yeah.
I would have slapped me if I were him too. Even in that moment, I knew I would have done that to me if that had been if the situation had been reversed, and I couldn't fault him for that. That was the only time I was ever struck, and I cannot say that it was in error.
My brother and I got spankings, but it was afterwards. It was my mother sitting down and explaining to us, "I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at what you did." And trying to get us to understand that there is a difference.
You had a Christmas Story kind of a rate of an upbringing.
Well, and it was nurturing.
Yeah.
It was not just, I'm going to beat you because I'm pissed off.
Right.
And then, not ever say anything to you about it. And then once it was over, we didn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was done with, it was out the door, and, move on with your life.
Right. Now,
but the thing is about this film that's important to note in what he's doing, because we don't have any history.
Right.
With anybody that's here. None of the recruits that he talks to. None of the recruits that he's barking at. Do we ever learn anything? Not Joker, not Gomer Pyle, not anybody.
We're introduced to these people when he is.
Yes. And
we know, the only thing we know about them is that they got their heads shaved violently just before.
Yeah. I saw a video on YouTube, and it's one of those videos where they'll they'll go into Goodfellas, and they'll tell you about Goodfellas from the perspective of a person who was in the mafia. In this, they went into a Full Metal Jacket from the perspective of a person who had been a real life DI. And he said it's pretty authentic. He said it's really there. He said the only difference, the only thing that's not included, is that you would not have one DI. You would have several. Right. Because he calls himself your senior drill instructor, which means that there's others. Now, I understand that for the purposes of this film, it is more economical to have one than three. But
right, and you see people around Hartman from time to time. You see other people with other squads and things like that out on the grounds and everything. So you know that there are other groups of people being trained probably in a similar fashion. If we went to another bunk, it would probably just be maybe a differently articulate rant than what Hartman is giving.
As he says, his language and all of the things that he says, that's real. Yeah. And I don't know if Arlie Ermy was ad-libbing all of that from experience.
From what I understand, he kind of had an uncredited, writing his own kind of based out of what he was getting. He was allowed to do how he would react in that real situation. I think because he had been a DI and he was retired then, I don't think he needed lines during those long stretches.
He just did it.
The only people that needed direction were the people that needed to be had their attention called to them. So it was Cowboy, it was Private Pile, it was Joker,
Private Brown.
Yeah. So
because the first person, I mean, he zeroes right in on the black guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like just zeroes right in.
Private Snowball.
Private Snowball, yeah, and he seems to know exactly where to go.
Yeah.
Because when he marches up to somebody, it's like he automatically he zeroes in. It's like a schoolyard bully. He just kind of zeroes in on whatever. Okay, you're black. You're short. You're big and dopey looking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're
you look like a smartass.
You look like a smartass, or you act like a smartass.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all to zero in on who they are, and their most vulnerable point.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, again, to break them down. Now, let's talk about Gomer Pyle.
Wow. Vincent D'Onofrio.
This is the first time I ever saw him. And
I don't think it's the first time I ever saw him, but it is definitely the first time that he really made a huge impression.
Yeah. You can tell he's essentially a child. He
has
limited intelligence.
Well, he is he's not neurotypical in development. He has learning disabilities or cognitive disabilities. You know, there's a terrible R word that would crudely describe it. But basically,
although I don't think he is, it's just
I think he's just a little
slow
and very naive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's emotionally mature.
Yeah.
Which would be stunting his ability to learn at the level that he should be given his age.
Okay, now did they ever say if these guys were drafted or
they
enlisted?
Were all. I don't think you get drafted into the Marines. I think you get drafted into the Army. I think you have to sign up for the Marines.
Okay. But he comes in and there's a preconceived notion with him about what the Marine Corps is, because he's enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's laughing, he's smiling, and the sergeant's first job is to wipe that stupid smile off his face,
which he can't do.
Oh, he does. Well, I mean, eventually he does.
Yes,
but
eventually
he starts with one technique. When that doesn't work, he takes it to a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
When that doesn't work, he takes it to an even deeper level. And it's breaking him down so that it's like, you have to know that I am absolute dead serious.
Yeah.
When I say what I say.
And
the humiliation is the final tactic.
Right.
Because
choke yourself. Don't touch my hand. Don't bring my hand to you. I said choke yourself.
Lean forward and choke yourself. Yeah. And it's something in his cognitive thinking is bent a different way, because the one thing that the sergeant does, and as I understand this, all these drill sergeants did this, they're going to zero in on the guy who's leading, on the guy who's bringing up the rear.
Yeah.
The most vulnerable, softest recruit, not just for his benefit, but for everyone else's too.
Mm-hmm.
And Private Pyle's journey is fascinating because there is a tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the scenes that front load at the beginning of the film are him being humiliated.
Mhm.
And trying.
Yeah.
But failing.
Right.
Doing stupid things.
And the whole... He's going to continue in that fashion, and he would have until they did... I don't
Until
remember.
the jelly donut.
Well, the jelly donut, and then the him bringing up the rear, sucking his thumb with his pants around his ankles.
Yeah.
And then there's a term for it, but I don't remember what it is. But the soap in the towels.
Oh, the soap beating. Yeah.
When they beat him, what they do is I had a friend in the army who told me about this. 4 people will grab the corners of your blanket and pull down so that you cannot move. And this actually normally happens to everybody at least once during basic training.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
Yes. But also my friend had a
blanket party.
Yes, a blanket party. Yes, thank you. My friend who relayed this was about as fine-tuned a physical machine as Pyle. He just didn't weigh as much.
Yeah.
He actually got
doughy.
Well, he got an uncharacterized discharge because he couldn't run the mile in the time that they gave him.
Yeah.
So, but the blanket party, 4 guys, they'll take the corners and they'll pull it down so that you can't move. And he said the one thing you got to do, because you can feel it starting, is you've got to move your hands real fast to cup your junk. Otherwise, they're going to hit you in the balls with soap.
Yeah.
And to probably cause genuine urethral damage. But this is a standard practice, but when it happens to him, that's when he snaps. That's when
This is immediately following the jelly donut.
Right. That's when
he goes to another level because he cannot get to Private Pyle through the humiliation that he's been issuing. He takes it to a different place. And he says, I can't get anywhere with Private Pyle by punishing him. So I am going to punish all of you.
Well, see, when he says that, he says, I have not done my job. I have failed Private Pyle.
Mm-hmm.
I have failed because you have not done your job to do this. Like, yeah, you're pushing the blame here. But this made me... I actually watched this movie after I saw a tweet. A guy had shared that his daughter put on a teacher evaluation form. He said, "What should we do differently?" And she said, "You should end collective punishment because, as per the 1943 Geneva Conventions, doing collective punishment is a war crime."
Yeah.
And he said, "I don't know whether I should be proud of her or ground her because," but that was sticking in my head when this was happening. He was committing a war crime.
Yeah.
By punishing them, but then to get...
Who are you going to tell?
To get that... Well, right. Complaints flow upstream, and we all know how well things go upstream.
Right.
So they'll grab it, they'll bring it down, they'll tighten it up, which is not what they do to him, but still.
Well, Cowboy grabs him and puts the
right.
the sock in his mouth.
Right. So that's when his...
It's a painful scene because this is a character, this is a man who is still an overgrown child. And even when he's yelling after they stop, it's still, even his ow is
when
still
he's crying,
painful.
This is
That's the breaking point.
It's kind of a version of letting the baby cry themselves out in the crib.
Yeah.
With far worse ramifications. We did that for my son, and he hasn't murdered people. So, but he snaps, and he becomes the ideal recruit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he becomes through that discipline
exactly what Hartman wants him to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big problem, because that's what signed his death warrant.
Because it goes to a different place.
Right.
The weird thing is that, and this has to be brought up too. Almost everything that Hartman says through the entire film is really to effect. You know what's going on there. The one place where it is displaced is when he's talking to the troops, and he says, he begins to equate the Marines' ability to shoot straight with Charles Whitman and Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
And
proud of the fact that they were Marine
Marines.
Sharpshooters.
And Charles Whitman murdered several people in Texas.
Right, from a water tower. If you watch Peter Bogdanovich's Targets, is kind of a nod to that, and influenced by that. And of course, Lee Harvey Oswald was as
these were disturbed individuals.
The or one of the assassins of JFK, depending on
your perspective,
depending on how what you believe and how you interpret events. It's not exactly, they're not exactly people that you would think would be idolized.
And you would imagine that he would pick out famous Marines, famous people who gloried themselves,
right? But no,
or something. But he picks out assassins.
Oswald, who scored a headshot when he shouldn't have even been able to get all 3 rounds off,
and Oswald, who murdered a police officer, and Charles Lee Whitman, who killed innocent people.
Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating that you know what, that actually reminds me of something. A kid I grew up with went into the Army, and he came back from basic, or he was on leave for something, and I was talking to him, and he goes, "Yeah, my drill sergeant said, that Jimi Hendrix was an Army sharpshooter, and that's when he wrote All Along the Watchtower." And I said, "Bob Dylan wrote All Along the Watchtower, and Jimi Hendrix never stepped 1 foot in Vietnam, let alone was he ever an Army sharpshooter. He was in England. He couldn't even be drafted."
Right.
When all of this was happening, and and then he was too old. By the time he came back over to the States, he was too old to get drafted. Mm-hmm. Bob Dylan wrote that in Woodstock, New York in 1967, and he's like, "No," and I said, "Yeah, look it up.
Trust me.
For real, not from your drill sergeant. He doesn't know what he's talking about." And he got very mad at me. Now, he and I were never very close in the first place, despite the fact that we were next door neighbors. But there wound up being some
issues.
Yeah.
Well,
let's just say there was a "Don't Tread on Me" flag during Obama's presidency on their lawn. So
Wow. Well,
but that focus is, you should be impressed because these people killed people so efficiently.
Yeah.
Not horrified that they snapped and murdered a president and murdered other innocent people.
Civilians.
Yes. So You get
It
where
is.
he's coming from.
There's also this, because there's a moment we should talk about Joker too, because Joker's our focus in this scene,
Mhm.
because we're looking at it through his point of view, and he makes himself right out of the gate. He makes himself the smartass, and I'm
Is this
basically
John Wayne?
right,
Is this me?
and he's basically going to make himself the troublemaker, and
Right.
Sergeant Hartman lets him know that that's not going to happen.
Right.
But he's also resilient because there's a scene.
My favorite
where he's
scene when
talking
he's like,
about
do you
Virgin
not
Mary.
the Virgin Mary? Yeah, and he said, "Do you believe in the Virgin Mary?" No, and he slaps him, and he says, "What about now?" No, sir, no, sir. And then he slaps him. He goes, "Are you still going to tell me that you do not believe in the Virgin Mary?" And he says, "Sir, respectfully, the private believes that no matter what the private says next will result in punishment, because if he says no, he'll be punished. But if he says yes, he'll be punished for reversing himself, sir." And he like, "You're squad leader now." He's like, "You get it. You understand it now."
And he gives him Private Pile, which is a mistake.
Yes. Because Joker is nurturing.
Joker is nurturing, and you're trying to put nurturing into a person who has been rattled to the core.
Well, this is
And
before this happened before he was assigned to Pyle before Pyle snapped.
Right. But he's
Pyle
going
was
to a
coming
different place.
along,
Yeah.
slowly but surely,
Mhm.
through Joker's nurturing. The trouble is, it was too slow.
And you can see when he's, it's mothering. You can see when he's buttoning his shirt.
Mm-hmm.
You can see when he's trying to teach him how to polish his shoes.
Christ, Leonard, you really look like shit today.
Yeah, yeah, and
Tucking his shirt in and everything, like he's a 7-year-old. Yeah.
right, like he's a child,
Yeah.
and it's mothering, and it's pushing him further and further because his brain is broken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And it comes down to that moment.
Mm-hmm. And when he's in the latrine, I have never understood why the military calls it the head. Why is it the head? Why would you shit in the head?
No idea.
Anyway,
No idea.
I've never understood the term, but anyway,
and it ends up he shoots the sergeant
he
and
loads
himself.
he loads the clip, locks and loads, and Hartman comes in screaming. Joker says, "Sir, it is the private's duty to inform the drill sergeant that the private is holding a fully armed, locked and loaded weapon. Sir." And then for a brief second, Hartman looks like he'll be a little gentle. Because he takes a couple of soft steps, he has his hands up in a non-threatening fashion, and he says, "Now, come on and hand me the rifle.
I want that weapon.
I want that weapon." He doesn't say it. He doesn't yell it. He's saying it calmly. It's the calmest sentence he makes in the entire film.
And then he starts yelling again.
But when it is not immediately surrendered to him, he starts screaming at him again, "What's your major malfunction, numbnuts?" And that was... How would you like it if your last words were, "What is your major malfunction, numbnuts?" If that was then chiseled onto your tombstone like this. It's his last words. I mean, it would encapsulate his entire personality, but...
Isn't it interesting, though? Joker doesn't refer to him as Pyle.
No, he refers to him as Leonard.
He's trying to get back to that humanity. He's trying to revert. It's like, take it easy, Leonard. He's trying to pull him back, remind him. It's like the demonic possession is taken over, but you're trying to speak to the person who's in there.
I want to talk to Reagan.
Right. Yeah.
Reagan's not here.
And he's trying to get to him, but it's too far gone.
Yeah.
This psyche is too far gone.
Right.
He's too he's in that other place,
Right.
and then he starts doing the drills, and then he kills himself.
And then he shoots himself in the head, and then we fade out and we fade in to Vietnam. Now, this is where
From violence to sex.
right, because in too many cases they're the same thing.
And that's the thing about this whole first segment of the film, is because you're trying to mesh sex and violence together.
This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for
Right.
fighting, this is for fun.
Yeah, one is not exclusive to the other.
Right. Now, because of that shift,
Mhm.
and because the only person you recognize on screen is Joker, that tone shift, that first 45 minutes could stand as a short film.
It does.
Yes.
Essentially.
And that's where people lose it, because there is a tone change. It goes from the so tightly wound that it literally snaps to a more jovial situation
Right.
until it's not. But the second part is summed up in the conversation between Joker and the rebellion general from The Empire Strikes Back.
General Rakian.
Yes, General Rakian. Who's, why do you have "Born to Kill" on your helmet but wear a peace sign on your vest? And he says, I think it was saying something about the duality of man, the Jungian thing.
Yeah.
That is what the whole movie is.
Mm-hmm.
The duality of man.
Yeah.
In these different situations. And the second part doesn't work without the first part. The first part really doesn't work without seeing how it ends up.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going along and you get used to Joker and Rafterman, and somehow they're connected. They might be from the same town or something. He says that I told your mother I'd be responsible for you.
Yeah.
And, if I don't, she's going to find me wherever I am, hunt me down, and kill me. So I think that they are childhood friends.
Mm-hmm.
That they somehow got hooked up together again for Stars and Stripes.
I think that the character of Animal Mother is essentially what Private Pile would have been.
And not for nothing, but it really doesn't feel like Adam Baldwin is struggling to get a lot of his dialogue out. It feels like that's a lot of how he he is he's a piece of work off screen. Yeah. Off screen, he is a piece of work. He is not a good person.
He's a piece of something.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say this, and I want to compare, as we always do with Kubrick, is the theme of dehumanization.
Mm-hmm.
In tearing down the human animal was complementary to the last film we talked about, which was Clockwork Orange.
Well, that's actually our next film.
Is it our next film? Well, I mean,
the way that this is going to be ordered, it is going to be after this. But we talked about it before we recorded this.
Complementary to A Clockwork Orange, in that you also have a wild personality that is then basically put in a straitjacket until it becomes what society wants it to become.
It's repressed without being neutered.
Right, and the same goes really for something like Passive Glory,
Mhm.
in which you are trying to, in which the system is trying to make men into what they want them to be through violence and murder. You know,
Now,
I'm going to shoot a couple of your friends just so that I can make my point.
now, what I'll say is, to me, the most inhuman character in the movie is not Animal Mother, is not Hartman, is not Private Pyle.
Mm.
It's the door gunner.
Yeah,
How do you shoot women and children? It's easy. You just don't lead them as much.
Mhm.
He is having fun murdering men, women, and children, regardless of affiliation. He doesn't care. He is told
has
to shoot,
become-
so he just shoots. Anyone who runs is a VC. Anyone who stands still is a well-trained VC.
he is doing exactly what they are told to do in the boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
It is a hard heart that kills.
He is the most inhuman person in the movie.
He's essentially what they want him to be.
Which
He's essentially
is
what they've told him to
why
be, basically.
it's so disgusting.
Right. Exactly. And again, Kubrick's theme of dehumanization.
Right. And
It's
you
just
know
there.
that guy rotated home.
Yeah.
You know
went
he
back
didn't
home.
he didn't get killed. He rotated back home and had probably struggled with life after
Before and after.
because what did he say? 135 confirmed kills, and that was before he was mowing people down in that rice paddy?
Yeah.
Like, how do you go home and go, well, that's not what I do anymore? Literally, your job was to sit in a helicopter and murder unarmed civilians. How do you go home and apply that to a job?
How do you fold back into a normal society in
Where
which
you're not allowed to shoot women and children and
psychologically you have been trained? It is a hard heart that kills. You have been psychologically trained to reorganize your brain to be a killer, and then you are sent home.
Of course, that guy's probably one of the people that never actually leaves the military. Like,
Yeah.
actually, like...
You hope not.
Yeah.
He goes home and tries to have a wife and children. God love
Oh,
him.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, yeah.
And it folds into paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
It folds into a lot of psychological issues, substance issues. Not everybody does that now.
No.
Not everybody does that.
No.
But a lot of times it folds into a lot of things that are
There
unhealthy.
are actually people who completely dissociate themselves from the fact that they've murdered people.
Mm-hmm.
They can say,
And
well,
that's what they want them to do.
that was war. That's what had to happen. I don't do that now because I'm not a soldier now.
Mm-hmm.
And they compartmentalize it and push it away. Otherwise, they would probably go mad.
Yeah. And some of them do.
Yeah.
Like Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yes.
Charles Whitman.
So when we get to Vietnam, we are seeing the result of the beginning that we saw at the start of the film. We are seeing what has been produced by the Sergeant Hartmans.
And how they handle it.
Right. So, and I'll
we're
say
also-
this, Animal Mother has a genuine look of fear
Yeah.
that the door gunner likely would not have exhibited.
Can I mention something also?
Yeah.
We mentioned this last time. And I think it's important because, unfortunately, and this is really sad, outside of what, outside of anything that Sergeant Hartman says in this movie, the one thing that people carry away from this is the most racist line in the entire film.
The
And it is
Vietnamese
said by the prostitute.
Yeah, we don't need to repeat
Which-
it here.
which actually, you know, probably would not have gone through, would not have become a legacy of this film had it not been for Two Live Crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Who sampled that bit into a whole song. And I'm always disturbed that that's the one thing that people took away from this. And most people probably don't even know that that came from this movie.
right, no, people just know that that's something racist you say about an Asian person.
Or probably thought Two Live Crew came up with it.
Yeah.
You know?
But,
It's...
yeah. And so...
Papillon Suzu is her name. She went to England and, if I'm not mistaken, became a therapist, massage therapist.
Hey.
And there's I don't know that for absolute fact, but this is what I've heard.
So, I mean, you find out, I love that they assign Joker to the newspaper.
Mm-hmm. Stars and Stripes.
Because that is an element that had not before, nor has it been since, filmed.
Mm-hmm.
The job of an enlisted war correspondent.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want the negative stories. They just want to say, did they hit anybody? Well, law of averages. Say they hit X amount of people and it's an officer. The grunts love it when an officer gets killed. You get to see the propaganda that they are told that they have to write.
You're not really reporting. You
Right.
are editing colorfully.
Exactly. And the fact that we don't ever really get to see that side of the American military
Mm-hmm.
just
Yeah.
shows where the way Kubrick wanted us to look at this.
Because their journalism in Stars and Stripes is not it's not journalism, it's propaganda,
Right.
and it comes down through the political machinations. And it goes into a whole thing. I read several years ago, I read Walter Cronkite's biography. The last quarter of his book is taken up with what is wrong with the news, especially during wartime. Because he was a war correspondent during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And generally had a free hand to write, because he wrote for the Associated Press.
Mm-hmm.
And generally had a free hand to write what he wanted to. And he did. But he then starts talking about, because the military does have censorship,
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, because battle plans,
Right,
the size of trips and movement,
you don't want the battle
you can't
plans
report
to
all that
be
stuff.
put on the news because there are operatives who
Kind
will
of like
watch
they
it.
did kind of like Norman Schwarzkopf did during the Gulf War.
Yes, kind of
How
like
did
that.
Saddam Hussein know where we were? He watched CNN.
Yes, exactly.
And the idea of political censorship is keeping the public from knowing what is going on. Not the size of troops and movement, not battle plans, but altering the story to turn a failure into a success.
Right.
To turn 400 dead soldiers into 5 dead soldiers.
Right. It's the ultimate spin. It's the ultimate spin room.
That's what I get out of that scene.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened in the Gulf War.
Mm-hmm.
They were kept out of the battle zone, and they were kept away from the action. And all we have as record of that event, of that war, all we have is the military's official word, their official report,
And all the night vision bombings that we got to see.
Right. They were heavily edited too.
Right. It also looked like we were attacking the Emerald City.
So yeah, So essentially, what they were trying to do is is what was done in World War II,
Mhm.
because it was so closely monitored, and troop deaths, which they kept locked in a cabinet called the Chamber of Horrors, those photographs, was, from their estimation, to keep up morale.
Yeah.
But it's basically to keep everybody from knowing the inhuman.
So that they were not, impeached and then sent over to The Hague to answer for war crimes,
Right.
because they were certainly guilty of them.
In Vietnam, over and over
Oh
again.
yeah, Peter Jennings had them burning a village on the news.
Oh, the My Lai incident.
Yeah. I mean, that never would have happened in the Gulf War.
No. Well, we don't know if it happened in the Gulf War because we didn't.
But we know that it happened in Afghanistan because there were embedded reporters by that point because of what happened in the Gulf War.
Look, war is ugly.
Yeah.
And people do ugly things on both sides.
Yeah, it's also entirely unnecessary, but
Yeah. There is a way to handle certain things. There is a level of being able to pinpoint certain things. But we go crazy and we start doing other things.
Yeah.
Now, when Hitler was steamrolling over Europe, there was a necessary engagement that needed to take place.
However, initially it should have been addressed that the Treaty of Versailles was horrendously unfair and crippled the economy of Germany before the Depression, and therefore if there had been aid sent to Germany, he would not have risen to the chancellorship and none of World War II would have happened. But
and
they
try
wanted
to do for Germany what Truman did.
Right, because France felt like they always got the short end of the stick when they fought Germany, because they fought Germany once every 45 years. It was like clockwork. There was, and it was always over the Sudetenland. They wanted them punished, and the newly formed alliance didn't say no.
Mm-mm.
Because they were pissed at Germany too for World War I. So they're like, yeah, let's make them all these sanctions and everything, and then they're still paying off this war debt from the First World War, crippling their entire economy, and then the Depression strikes, crippling everybody else's economy.
Right.
Making Germany even worse off.
So you go down to, and it goes back thousands of years. I mean, but you go back to the beginning of the 20th century, when World War I was being built up, and you realize it really went to the top because it started with those old grudges between the monarchs, because they were all interrelated.
Mm-hmm.
Those old monarchs coming down to Kaiser Wilhelm, who was a grandson of Queen Victoria, and never believed that she loved him enough. And it came down to, he was ruling what was essentially a very young empire.
Mm-hmm.
And he and at the time,
that was the Second Reich.
That was the Second Reich. And during the whole thing, all of these countries are basically shaking sticks at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we're waiting to see who's gonna be the first one to take the first.
Right.
And then
Gavrilo Princip in the former Czechoslovakia.
Is assassinated.
Gavrilo Princip is the assassin. He assassinates Archduke Ferdinand of Hungary. Hungarian.
Hungary, Austria.
Yeah, Austria-Hungary, because they were the same country then,
right,
but hyphenated. Kind of
the
like
Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Right. And Czechoslovakia, then Czechoslovakia, now Czech Republic, and I think about 3 other different countries: Bosnia and Herzegovina, they split too. All of those places were Czechoslovakia at one point, and yeah, it was
And
the
it
it was
erupted.
the spark that lit an already built forest fire.
And in the and Germany was ready to go to war. They were so excited to go to war. And in the midst of them was a young recruit named Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And he went out and he fought, and it was now again we go back to the propaganda machine. Talk about this. When the war is coming to an end, when the war is coming to a close, they are fed information by their media that Germany is winning. And then inexplicably in November of 1919, they lose.
Yeah.
And people back home in Germany are stunned.
Mm-hmm.
They lose.
Yep.
You know, Germany has lost the war. What the hell?
Yep. 11/18/18, I believe, or 11/11/18 was the official end of the war.
And they blame people on the left.
Mm-hmm.
They blame
Jews.
mostly Jews. And it starts this whole fringe thing,
Right.
this whole fringe property that builds up with small factions, including the German Workers' Party, which soon became the Nazis.
Right.
And
So-
it takes 30 years, and it's just it's a whole, it builds and builds and builds. It's the snowman falling down the hill, and it builds and builds and builds.
Exactly. And that, when you finally get to Joker meeting up with Cowboy's company,
Yeah.
and going off, and ultimately the sniper,
Yeah.
that last 25 minutes of the movie,
Mhm.
I think that's some of the most riveting cinema of the 80s.
And I disagree with Roger Ebert. I do not think that was impersonal. I do not think Roger
no.
Ebert did not like this movie,
No, he
and
didn't.
a lot of it was because 4 months before Platoon had won the Oscar for Best Picture,
Right, and he really gushed over Platoon.
and he really gushed over Platoon. Well, Oliver Stone was there,
Right.
and Kubrick
But-
was.
I believe Full Metal Jacket more than I believe Platoon, because it's so surreal that it can't be. To me, it's just this surreal. You can tell that they're not in Vietnam. They are in a
They're in a city.
they're in
Gas
England. They're in England.
They're on a
You know
soundstage.
that they're on a soundstage. You know that they're either on location. You know that this is a fake setup. The same way that you know that the New York City that Eyes Wide Shut is in is not the real New York City.
No, that's Canada.
Right. No, it's England.
Is it England? Okay.
Once Kubrick moved to England to do Lolita, he wasn't a big fan of flying, and he also liked to have all of his privacy, but he liked to be close to where he could work, so he just never left England again.
Mhm.
So, no, it was all in England. He never left. He didn't go shoot anywhere else. So, there's too much. And I don't want to say too much. Platoon is a personal movie.
It is.
Platoon is
That's
a
what I was going to say.
personal story.
You're in their shoes. You're
Full
with
Metal
the platoon.
Jacket is an extrapolation
Mhm.
of the total understanding of Vietnam to that point.
Right.
So the surrealism makes it feel more genuine to me, because I can't imagine any of that making any kind of literal sense the way that it does in Platoon.
Both of them work to the point that they're trying to get to.
Yeah.
And in the point that they're trying to get to. I think this film it's a more outsider point of view. It's a more it's you can tell it's from the point of view of a person who wasn't there. You can tell that Platoon was from the point of view of a man who was there.
Right, but you can also tell that Full Metal Jacket is from the perspective of someone who continued to that day to not think that the war should have ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I think they complement each other.
I think they do
I
too.
really do.
They're not opposites, and I don't want to badmouth Platoon. I like Platoon. I've seen it a couple of times. I've seen Full Metal Jacket.
I'd rather be watching this.
I've seen
but...
Full Metal Jacket far more.
Mm-hmm.
But then I can even. I've seen Full Metal Jacket more than I've even thought of watching Platoon. But the end with the sniper, and when it's revealed that it's a young woman, possibly not even a young woman, possibly, mid-teens.
It's a kid, yeah.
Who's very likely from that village, and the only reason she's shooting is because her village was attacked.
Right.
She may not even be VC.
Mm-hmm.
But even if she is, she's alone.
Yeah.
It's a young...
And apparently very good at what she does.
It is a young girl who was put in an extreme situation and defended herself against... She's Vietnam. And the company is America.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, she dies, but America doesn't take over.
Yeah.
They leave. They leave her there.
Yeah.
And
nothing good happens in this movie.
No. That end with them just moving on, I think it's it's Kubrick's way of saying, we went in, we murdered this country, and we left.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing for them.
There's no victory. There's no victory parade. There's no. There's nothing. The peace treaty is signed in 1975, and America just doesn't give a shit.
No. The perfect follow-up to Full Metal Jacket, I would say, is Oliver Stone's other Vietnam movie, Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
I think that would that would be a great double bill. Mm-hmm. You do Full Metal Jacket, and then you do Born on the 4th of July.
Probably one of the best performances of Tom Cruise's career.
Yeah. That, Magnolia, and Eyes Wide Shut for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not, and that's the weird thing is that, again, this war just goes on and on and on. What is it, 67 when they leave?
Mm-hmm. When
this movie ends, and they've got another couple of years to go, and a lot more bodies to deal with.
Yeah.
And they're just leaving, and like I say, the peace treaty will be signed in 75. America, the economy in 75 was doing fine, was doing okay. People didn't give a damn about Vietnam when it happened.
No.
When it ended.
All they cared about was that, their kid wasn't going to get drafted.
And their kid was coming home,
right.
Hopefully.
So it's a bleak movie.
It's a bleak subject.
That I think the perfect irony in a movie where irony is the middle name.
A concept.
Yeah, it's basically the concept of the movie. The last thing you hear, even after Joker's final narration, is the Mickey Mouse Club theme.
Mm-hmm. That's weird. Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Isn't that terrifying?
Yeah.
A group of trained killers marching through a field singing M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E, Mickey Mouse.
Trying to keep some kind of sense of normalcy.
But
some
also
kind of sense of
bringing in childhood.
Yeah.
Almost as a soothing balm, but it winds up being more ominous than it does calming.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then the Rolling Stones.
well, this is also the only real the only movie that Kubrick did that did not have a lick of classical in it.
No.
And the other outlier is Eyes Wide Shut for having the Chris Isaak song in it, while the rest of it is dominated by atonal Grigorovich, discordant Russian music.
He only has in Full Metal Jacket 3 songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it's These Boots Are Made for Walking.
Paint It Black,
Paint It Black.
And the song at the beginning.
Right. How much is that doggy in the window?
No, it's I can't remember the name of it.
Oh no,
wasn't it? It's an old country song. I cannot remember the name of it.
Yeah.
It's while they're getting their hair cut.
Yeah.
They're getting head shaved. I'm trying to remember it.
Let's see if I can find it. But yeah, he in a very un-Kubrick move does not use music to
Hello Vietnam by Johnny Wright.
Yeah. So
and Servant Bird.
Yeah. Yes. I can't hear that song without Peter Griffin.
Family Guy.
Yep. And that actually did not damage Full Metal Jacket in any way, shape, or form, because that image of Peter in that sequence
it's the image of Peter
works.
Trying to sleep with that record under his arm.
And what was it? Where is my Servant Bird record? I brushed my teeth
Peter,
and went to bed and made love with it. Now it's gone. Full Metal Jacket is leaps and bounds better than its reputation.
Yeah, it has a...
Full Metal Jacket is, I think, for the general populace, the way that The Shining was for me. The more you watch it, the more you understand that
more stuff comes out of it. Yeah.
This is a grander thing than you ever gave it credit for.
Okay, but I gotta ask you this. Okay, let's do a checklist. What have we not done yet? We haven't talked about Lolita.
We haven't done, in chronological order, Fear and Desire, Killer's Kiss, The Killing, Spartacus, Lolita, Barry Lyndon.
Paths of Glory.
No, we did Paths of Glory for the. We did Paths of Glory for the 100th anniversary of the conclusion of World War I.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So yeah, we only have his first two movies that are not worth an episode together, let alone by themselves. Then The Killing, Spartacus, Lolita, and Barry Lyndon.
Yeah. So
we have 6 more of his 13 films to do. We could
we're gonna get to them all.
We could easily put Fear and Desire and Killer's Kiss into an episode that primarily focuses on The Killing, because The Killing, as great as it is, isn't real deep. So,
I have to see. Okay, now I have to see The Killing, because I found out 6 days ago that one of the extras in it is Rodney Dangerfield.
Right, I haven't rewatched it since
he's in
you told
a crowd
me that.
scene. He doesn't have a line, but he's in there.
And
I'm imagining, just in the background,
adjusting his tie. Yeah,
adjusting his tie,
and it's askew. He's got that look on his face, and you can just feel that he's saying, "I get no respect, I tell you."
Get with that joke, kid. It's an antique.
I loved Rodney Dangerfield so much.
Oh, God bless Rodney.
So yeah, that's what I have for Full Metal Jacket. It really is. I encourage people to read your 4-star review on your site. It is the most praising.
I wish I could write like that all the time. I wrote like that in a moment, and I can't
It is the
get it back.
single. It's the piece praises Full Metal Jacket more than any other thing I've ever read about Full Metal Jacket.
And probably praises it more than anything I've ever written.
But you back it up, and there are reasons for every accolade you bestow upon it, and therefore it's essential reading for the film, I think. And
I have to find out what I wrote. I don't
Criterion
remember what I wrote.
Collection, if you're listening and you ever get the chance to put out Full Metal Jacket, I have an essay for you.
I do not even remember. I know that I wrote it in a moment, and I never even thought about it. It was like
it's really good. I really enjoyed it. So I encourage you all to check that out on
I'll
Armchair
put
Oscars.
a link to it down here.
And so coming up, so we've had the sound and we've had the fury, and it signified a little bit. We're going to move then to 2 of my selections back to back, and then we'll be back to our normal rotation in April.
I promise we're going to get this together.
We'll be doing A Clockwork Orange, followed by, in my opinion, and in a, I feel, stroke of mad genius, the sound that follows A Clockwork Orange will be Singing in the Rain.
Singing in the Rain.
Because what else could it be? You take the perversion and then
have to talk into the bush.
Well, I can't make love to a bush. I love Singing in the Rain. I've seen it in the theater several times.
God.
I'm ashamed that it's taken us this long to get to it, but I am proud that I am pairing it with A Clockwork Orange.
Yes. Should be. Should be.
So
that's all.
That's what we have. Our April selections are still being finalized for the most part, and that wraps it up here. You can find all of our back episodes at the podbaydoorspodcast.wordpress.com. Hit the like, subscribe, and notifications buttons on your iTunes and your YouTubes, where you can hear us copy and paste pod_bay at pod_bay, Twitter and Patreon. That's the handle. We thank you very much for joining us, and the Pod Bay doors are now closed, you filthy maggots.
The mission has been completed.
Kiss me goodbye and write me while I'm gone. Goodbye, my sweetheart. Hello, Vietnam.
America has heard the bugle call, and you know it involves us one and all. I don't suppose that war will ever end. There's fighting that will break us up again.
Goodbye, my darling. Hello, Vietnam. A hill to take, a battle to be won. Kiss me goodbye and write me while I'm gone. Goodbye, America has trouble to be starved. We must stop communism in that land, our freedom will start slipping through our hands. I hope and pray someday the world will learn that fires we don't put out will bigger burn. We must save freedom now at any cost, or someday our own freedom will be lost. Kiss me